Well, the session today is about inventory counting and all the functions we have in Beas for inventory counting. Here I have Beas with business 1 in a separate layout. Okay, this is the 2009 layout where we have all Beas functions in a single menu. And here in materials management, we have in inventory our functions for inventory counting. Basically, we have three functions for inventory counting. We have initial stock, regular inventory, and annual inventory count. The differences are the following. Initial stock is used when you are first implementing Beas and you want to load the initial inventory for the customer. So here in initial inventory, when you click here and we click in new and we create a scenario for initial inventory, we only select a name for this scenario. We select how the items are going to be evaluated. And also in this counting scenario, we can input the prices when counting. And we select an account for booking the values. Here we don't filter for warehouses, for example. That is a filter that we have in the other scenarios when we are counting stock. Here we are only inserting the initial stock for the database. I'm going to create a scenario, so I'm going to put a name in the scenario. Here I'm going to select how this will be valued. Here I select a date for posting the inventory. For example, if the customer wants to post inventory in the last day of the last month. So here I select an account. Let me select here. Select this account here. Can be the account that the customer wants to use to register inventory values. Here we can put references and comments for the journal entry and also a journal remark for posting inventory. So here I'm putting the initial inventory, update. Okay, and we have here a button called stock taking. Clicking on stock taking, Beas will open this screen. This is a screen where we are going to insert the items that are going to be received in the system for the initial inventory. To do so, we can click on new and we can select an item, select a version if the item has version control, select the warehouse, select a bin location if we have bin location in the warehouse. For example, if I select a warehouse without bin location, I don't see the bin location. If I select an inventory with bin location, I must choose the bin location also. And here I put the counting amount. And I have the option here to set the valuation price. That is the price that I'm going to use to book this item receipt. So update. And here I'll have the item with its price. It is also possible to import a file in here for the initial inventory. For example, if I have an Excel file like this with items, quantities, warehouse, bin locations, batch numbers, shelf life, that is the expiration date for the item, price and currency, I can import this file into Beas for creating the initial stock. I can click here in this button, import. Beas will pop up this window. In here, Beas always says the structure of the file. It is mandatory that the Excel file contains all these columns. Okay, so you need to have all these columns in here and in this order. If you're missing a column, this will not work. Okay, so even if you're not going to put a bin code, for example, you need to put the bin code column here empty. And so you click yes. And now we select a text file separated by tabs. Here I have one. And Beas will load this and put all the data in here. So here I have the item, the warehouse, the quantity, the batch number, and price and currency. After we have this initial inventory field, we can click in booking, and clicking on booking will make Beas create material receipts for these items. Let me remove these items in here that I already have them in stock. I'm going to put only this line and click in booking. Yes. Beas will always ask for a backup before running the booking of initial inventory and also the stock adjustments when you are running inventory counting. Here I'm going to say that I had done a backup. And now Beas will execute this and create the inventory receipt. Here I see an error because I have set an account that I shouldn't. Let me see. Yeah, let me just change the account. Let me just select this cash at bank. Okay. Now let me try again. Okay, and now I have it created. So here I see it in green and created. Now I'm going to come here, inventory transactions, good receipt. And here I have the goods receipt created for the initial inventory. Here I see initial inventory and the goods receipt. Okay, so this is a very interesting function for registering the initial inventory. The big advantage we have using this function from Beas in comparison with the function from SAP Business One is that we can, from the moment where we insert the initial inventory into the system, select the bin locations and the batch numbers. With SAP Business One, it's quite complicated to select the batch numbers, and we cannot assign a Beas bin location at the moment we are creating the initial inventory. If you run the initial inventory from SAP Business One, you must later go into Beas and select the bin locations. Okay, so since we are running this from inside Beas, we can input the inventory with bin locations, and we don't need to change anything after creating the inventory receipts. So this is our function for initial stock. After running this, we can close it. We can select here initial stock thinking scenario, close. And this will not be open anymore, and you can see it in closed. Okay, so this was the first function we have here in materials management, inventory initial stock. Now we are going to check the second function, that is regular inventory. Regular inventory is a function for regular inventory countings. We also have annual inventory count. They have these different names, and also in annual inventory count implies that it is a function that you must run annually, but you can decide which function we are going to use. Even that it is named annual inventory count, you can run it month to month, 2 to 2 months, 3 to 3 months, no matter. You can use annual inventory count as your regular inventory counting function, okay? But we also have this regular inventory function that can also be used for regular countings. So you can choose which of these two functions you are going to use. The basic difference is that when we are creating a scenario for the regular inventory counting, we must use a cycle for this inventory. The cycle is a cycle defined in SAP Business One. Here in SAP Business One, we have in administration, setup, inventory, inventory cycles, and cycle count determination. We need to define these two master data for running the regular inventory. So we come here in inventory cycles. Here I have one cycle defined. And then we come here in cycle count determination, and we set the parameters for all warehouses. For example, for warehouse 01, I set for all item groups the corresponding cycle. And then I can come here into regular inventory. and create the scenario for a regular inventory counting. If I do not define the cycles, I cannot run this because Beas will not fill any data in the counting scenario. So to create a regular inventory scenario, we click here in New. Okay, so here we put a description for this counting scenario. And here we have some filters. We can select a range of items, starting and ending item, to select which are the items that we are going to count. Items properties, if you want to filter a specific property. Item group, for counting only one of all item groups we have. Warehouse, this is mandatory. We must select the warehouses that we are going to count. We can select one. If we click on one warehouse and click apply, the system will select only this warehouse. Or we can click in all, and then the system will select all warehouses. Or we can select the warehouses using shift or control. For example, if I want to choose all these, I can do with shift. And if I want to choose this one, and this one, I can click with control. And so apply, and Beas will select only the warehouses I have checked. If you are selecting a warehouse with bin locations, you also have to select the warehouse areas. If you have a warehouse with bin locations, you must define the areas for this warehouse. For example, here in warehouses, I have this warehouse with bin locations. So if I came here in extended, we can see the warehouse areas. And I see that each warehouse has 3 warehouse areas. And inside each one of these areas, we have the specific bin locations. So here, when we are selecting the warehouses, we must choose which areas we are going to consider. So now I'm going to choose this warehouse 01, apply. Since this is not a warehouse with bin locations, then I don't have any options here in warehouse areas. If I choose warehouse with bin locations, I can also choose the areas we are going to consider. So I'm going to choose the 01 because I only define the cycles for the 01. Here you can choose if you're going to consider inactive items or inactive batches for the counting scenarios. Here we choose which cycle we want to consider. Here I'm selecting cycle 1. The pricing for valuation, which is the price that the system must consider to create the inventory receipts if needed. The inventory valuation date, let me put it on 15. Stock increase and decrease accounts, this we must choose also. I'm going to choose any account in here. And here we have the references for the postings. If you want this inventory counting scenario to be a template for the future ones, we can also select as template save. And then we click on update. And we have our scenario created. We saw that Beas shows a loading bar here in the lower part. This means that it was populating the list in inventory list. Okay? If you don't get any result here in the inventory list, it may be because you haven't any cycle defined. For example, if I create a new regular inventory scenario for an inventory that I don't have any cycle defined, for example, quality control, this will come up empty. This is empty because here in cycle count determination, quality control warehouse, I don't have any cycle set for the item groups. So I must set the cycle for the item groups, and then the data will come. Let me select for the ones I have data. Okay. Update. Since this scenario already doesn't have any data, it will not fill up automatically. I must delete this and create a new one. For quality control, cycle, pricing for correction, count, update. And now we see the loading bar. This means that Beas has added data into the inventory list. Now we have it. Okay. So if you don't have any data in here, it's because you haven't defined the counting cycles. After creating our regular inventory scenarios, we can go into the inventory list to create the counting list. When we open the inventory list, we see here a listing of all the items that are included in the scenario we created. Here we see the item code, the item version, if the item has versions, the description, the warehouse. Here we see only one warehouse because I have filtered the warehouse. Here in batch number, we see the batch and the serial numbers. This depends on which control the item has. For example, here, these items have serial numbers. And these items in here have batch numbers. If we have bin locations, we could also see the bin locations in here. Here, extended information for the items, the inventory in the reference date when we created this counting list, the counting amount after creating the countings, and the difference from inventory and counting amount. If you want to check the inventory history, we can do it clicking in here, and the system will open the inventory history for this item. And here we have some filters we can run in this inventory list. In this moment, this filters doesn't make too much sense because we haven't created any counting yet. But after creating the countings, we can filter only differences, only not counted items, and only items with errors that cannot be booked. Here in the second tab, called Counting List, we can create the counting lists for these items. This first column in here is the number of the counting list. This means that all items are included in counting list number 1. And this is the number of the item inside this counting list. Now let's say that I want to split this counting scenario to 3 different persons. And I want to split this item to this item for the first person. So these are the items I'm going to leave in the counting list number 1. From this item until this item to the second person. So I must set this to the counting list number 2. I can do this clicking here in this button, fill in the number 2 and clicking on set. One important comment, Beas does not accept text in the counting list number, only numbers, okay? So we cannot put, for example, ABC in the name of the counting list, only a number. And all these other items, I'm going to set to the third person. So here I set to 3 and set. And now we have 3 counting lists. But now let's say that I want to make it different. I want to be sure that everyone has 15 items on its counting list. So I can also set 15 in here and click on this button called all. Actually, this doesn't mean all, this means every. And so we can say that for every 15 items, we create one counting list. And so clicking on here, the system will create for every 15 items one counting list. And so from 1 to 15, 1, 16, 2, 30, 2, 31, 2, 42, 3. So for every 15 items, the system defines one counting list. So these are basically the two ways that we can use to define the counting lists. After defining the counting list, we can print this. And here we have the counting list that we are printing. And the printing is by counting list number. So here we set which count list we want to print. So if we select 1, print, we have the counting list 1. If we put 3, we have the counting list number 3. Here in this layout, we have item code, warehouse, item name, batch or serial number, and a field for manually typing the amount counted. Coming back here into the administration, we have this button called Enter Counting. In this button, we can enter the counting for each item directly. So here, for example, if we put 1, now I come here and put 8, now here 1, come back, the system will come back into the screen, and we see flags in the items that have countings. All the items that have a flag are counted items. So this means that these 3 items underwent countings. So since I have counted these 3 items, I have an analysis regarding the counting amount and the inventory at the reference date. And this results in a difference. The items marked with a green flag are items that I do not have differences. So these 2 items in here haven't difference. And this item checked with a yellow flag has a difference. So in this item, I have 11 in inventory and I have counted 8 and I have a difference of 3. If I want to filter only the items with difference, I can click here in differences. And if I want to see all items again, all not counted, only not counted. Let's say that I have difference in one more item. Let me come here and then let me say that this item in here is with 4, this item is with 25, and this item with this batch number is with 4. Let's say that I have difference in all these 4 items. So I'm going to click here in difference. And I see that these 4 items have differences. If I come here in counting list, I can see that this first item belongs to counting list number 1 and these 3 items belongs to counting list number 3. It means that I have 2 different counting lists with differences. And I want to recount only the difference. I don't want to recount everything. I want to create one counting list only for the differences. What I can do is select these items, these 4 items, and set them to a 4th counting list. And I have these 4 items in a new counting list. If I come here and exhibit all, I can see that I have the same definition I had before for the counting lists, but these items with difference are in another counting list. They are in the counting list number 4. Well, until now, I'm doing the process manually from inside the counting scenario. But I may want the users to register the countings directly on a terminal, for example. And this I can do using the terminal. Coming here into Beas, attendance, terminal. And using the function called inventory. Clicking on here, Beas will open this window. In this window, I can select the inventory scenario I'm going to count. I can check the scenario code here in material management, inventory, regular inventory. I am counting the quality control scenario, so it is the ID 11. select 11. And here I have the counting lists I have for this scenario. So for the inventory counting 11, I have counting lists 1, 2, 3, 4. If I want to count 4, I select here. Here I can see the name of the counter. It comes automatically as James Bond because this is the name of my user in the terminal. And I can click in Enter Counting. Clicking on Enter Counting, Beas will open the screen with the 4 items that are inside this counting list, the inventory, the reference inventory, the date of the counting scenario, and here is the counted inventory. If I change here the counting, for example, to 5, these 3 items here were correct. Only this item really, only the counting for this item really wasn't correct. So I corrected the counting, and then I come back, quit the terminal, and when the counting manager comes back into the counting scenario, inventory list, now he'll be able to see that in this item, really, there was not a difference. Okay, so the difference is only in these 3 items. Now I have a very important comment for the counting process. Beas does not keep, let's say, a log of the changes in the countings. We have a table, and in this table, we have exactly what we have in here. This is what we have in the table. And in the table, we have the inventory and the counting amount. If we change the counting amount using the enter counting function or using it from the terminal or any other function we can do to enter the countings, Beas will only replace the counting amount. Okay? If we change the counting list, Beas will only replace the column with the counting list for another value. So this means that if the customer wants to keep a track of every counting created into the system, for example, after the first input of the quantities, save this, and before creating the new counting of the difference, you'll have to do this by exporting this to Excel. So you can right click, come in here, Excel, and export the results to Excel. And then you can change the countings, doing the counting again for the differences, okay? Because if you replace, Beas will replace this value in the database. Using the terminal, you can also insert countings by barcodes. For example, let me come here to terminal again. Inventory. Now I'm going to select the 11, I'm going to select the counting list number 4, and register barcodes. Beas will open this screen with the active field item. Here we have to read the barcode with the item code. So you can, for example, create a tag for the items with a barcode that identifies the item, identifies the warehouse, the bin location, the batch number, and then you can only read all these barcodes. For example, let me just come here to see the items that I have in this counting scenario. In the counting list number 4, let me just come into it. In the counting list number 4, I have the item FG01. Now I need a barcode that has the content FG01. After I read this barcode, Beas will automatically select this item. Now I must read the inventory code. So I need a barcode that gives me this result. If I had a bin location or a batch number, I also needed one barcode for the batch number and one barcode for the bin location. And here I specify the counting amount and click on End. Or I can click in Reset for coming back into this initial form. Now if I come back here into this counting scenario, I will see that I have a new value for this item that I registered using the barcode reader in the terminal. I can also insert the countings using this function. Here in Material Management, Inventory, Enter Counting. This will display exactly the same screen you have in the terminal. Okay, so if you go into the terminal, click on the button Inventory, Beas opens exactly the same screen. And here you can select the counting scenario, select the counting list, and enter counting or register barcodes. Enter counting. I have this list with all the items that I must count. Coming back. We can also do these countings with the web apps by activating the function here in master data terminal functions. I have here one group of functions for web, and we activate this function, the same function we have for the desktop, for example, we have also for the mobile. There is a function called inventory. So let me go to the web interface. Now I have my web menu and I have here inventory. Here in inventory, I have the active counting scenarios. I can click on the 11. I have here the counting lists. I can choose 4. And I can read the barcode or type in the code of the item. If I put here FG01, here it asks for a bin location, but I don't have one, so I just click on OK. Here I'm going to put the quantity, OK. And this is confirmed and comes back into the item for me to read the next item. Now if I come here into the counting scenario, I have 15 for this item. Okay, so this function is also compatible with the web apps. I have inputted 15 and I have the same 15 in here. So now I have identified all the differences I have in inventory. And in between my countings, I saw that I have one item that was not inside my items in inventory. Because, for example, when you generate this list here in the regular inventory, Beas you read all the items you effectively have in your inventory. But it can be that you have physically one item that is not in your virtual inventory. So here in inventory list, it may be missing some items. What you can do in this situation is come here into the enter counting function and click on new. Clicking on new will open the screen where you can select an item. For example, this item here. I can select this item. If the item has versions, I can select a version. I can select the warehouse. I can select a batch, or I can type in a batch. Let me put a batch. The counting amount is the amount of pieces I can see in my physical inventory that I don't have in my virtual inventory. I can put in batch attributes for creating the batch. I can type in date of permission, manufacturing date, expiry date, if it was produced by Beas or not. If it was produced by Beas, I must check self-produced. And I put here the value of this item. Here the system is taking the value that I already have in the item, but if you have an item that you do not have value in SAP, you can also put a value in here. Now let me update, and then we have here this item as well. Okay, so this way you can put in items that you do not have in stock when creating the counting scenario. Now in here I have this item, initial inventory in the reference date 0. This is not in my inventory reference date, but I do have a counting because I can see this physically. I don't have it registered in SAP, and I'm going to register it as a difference. Okay, so I have here difference, and I'm going to register this item as well. Here in the enter counting function, if I come here, enter counting, I also have the button new. So if the counting employee see an item, he can also click on new, select the item, and do all this process I have done now. Okay. However, creating new items into the counting scenario is not compatible with web apps. Here, inventory, 11, counting list. I have here one counting list called 0. This counting list 0 is the item that I have added. I have not linked this item into an existing counting list, so this is why the system created as 0. I select here 2, and I must read the item code. So I cannot create an item using these web apps, okay? So to add an item, I must come here and select new. Now, after I have finished the counting process, I can come here into Inventor List. I have decided that what has differences really has difference between the physical inventory and the virtual inventory, and I must adjust these differences. And so the way I have to adjust the differences is by clicking here in this button called Booking. Before clicking on Booking, I can click on this button called Check, and this button will check all the items and show me if I have any errors that I must correct before posting. So here the system may display some errors in this posting error if it sees a possible error for this item. After doing this check process, or by clicking directly in Booking, because if you click directly in Booking, the system also performs the check process. Here the system will ask me if I have checked everything. Click on yes. Here the system asks if I have created a backup of the database. I'm going to confirm this because the system always asks for a backup. And now that I have confirmed that I created a backup, the system created the bookings. I can see it in green. You can see that the item code is in green. If the item code is in green, it means that the system managed to create the required postings. If the item code weren't in green, so we should have an error here in the posting error. We need to correct this error before doing the booking again. And so if I come here in the inventory transactions, goods receipt, I have a goods receipt of FG01 and PA052 with these quantities and these prices. If I come here in goods issue, I have here a goods issue created for the items that I have a greater quantity in my virtual inventory than I had in the physical inventory. And so the system creates the bookings with the differences in relation to the virtual inventory. Okay, so this is the process of using the regular inventory and using the annual inventory counting. We have almost the same process. If we come here in inventory, annual inventory count, click on new, we create a scenario. We have basically the same filters: items, item range, item property, item groups, warehouses. Let me select these warehouses. Also, we must select warehouse areas. We can select which warehouse areas we are going to consider. If we want to consider inactive items and batches, the difference is that we do not have inventory cycle to select. So here we show all items, no matter if we have or not inventory cycles determined for the item group. So if you want to use only the annual inventory counting, you do not need to create these inventory cycles and set the cycle count determination. This is not necessary when using the annual inventory. Here we select the price, the valuation date, stock increase and decrease accounts, comments, and create a scenario. Beas is loading, okay. Now after creating the scenario, we have the inventory list that has exactly the same functions as the regular inventory. We have the same layout, the same filters, the same functions for creating the counting list. We have everything equal as we had in the regular inventory. One important function that we also have is the possibility to import data into this window. We have this possibility in extended. Clicking on extended, we can come here and click on import to import data. For example, I have here one Excel file with 3 items with quantities, warehouses, batch numbers, prices, and currency. Let me just check if I have these items in here. Here I have them with this batch, okay, this batch and this batch, okay, I have them, these 3 items. And now I'm going to import the counting because some customers may prefer to create the countings in an Excel file and then import it on the system. So we can click here and import. The layout is the same as we use for importing the initial inventory. Click on Start, yes. Select the file. And here we have it. We have the inventory at the reference date, we have the counting amounts, and we have the differences. So this way we can import a file with the countings and later create the bookings.